Welcome everybody, everyone's attention. I'd like to welcome everyone here tonight. Thank you very much for coming along. I got the job tonight. Mayor Sharp had another engagement, so he's gave me the Guernsey. So I'm here to do the welcome to initially. So thank you for joining us here tonight for Scenic Rim Regional Council's Draft Corporate Plan 2025 to 2030 and Draft Budget 2025 Community Consultation. This is an opportunity to get to know some of our other members of our community, but most importantly, gain some insight and have your say on two key documents that chart the course of our region now and into the future. I would like to open this session by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the many lands within the Scenic Rim, the Mununjali, Wangabara, Yugurpul and Mungaberi. That's hard words. And all Indigenous people in those regions, we pay respect to their elders past, present and emerging and acknowledge the important role they play in shaping the future for the Scenic Rim. Before we begin, there's some housekeeping, and I see this is for the boat exit. So the toilets are just out to your left, near the polling booths if you need them, and if in case of a fire, follow the directions of staff members to exit the building. Tea and coffee station is to the back right, which most of you hopefully have already found. I'm joined tonight here by a few of my fellow councillors. So we've got Councillor Amanda Hay from Tamborine, Division 1, Councillor Kerry Cryer, Division 2, and Councillor Duncan McGuinness from Division 6 here tonight. As I said earlier, the Mayor's an apology, Councillor Moriarty's an apology, and Councillor Sanders is an apology. We also have with us tonight some members of council. So we've got the Acting General Manager, Council Sustainability, Deborah Moore, and Acting General Manager, Asset and Environmental Sustainability, Shane Gillett, and Acting Manager, Customer, Community and Culture, Joe Jones on the end, and they'll be taking you through the documents tonight. I encourage you all to be curious and ask plenty of questions, but remember to be respectful to others and their views. As your feedback will help to inform council's decisions, it is important everyone has a chance to have a say. That said, we will aim to finish on time at 7 p.m, which makes for a fairly tight agenda, so we'll be keeping things moving along if possible. If time constraints mean you are unable to provide detailed feedback tonight, please make a submission online via Council's Let's Talk Scenic Rim community engagement platform, which will be accepting feedback until the 12th of May. Please be assured that personal information shared within the group discussion this evening is not for public dissemination or third-party use. Only the presentation section of this session will be recorded, but please be aware that we may take photos throughout the evening. So thank you for taking time to be part of tonight's discussion, and as Council greatly appreciates your input. Our previous community consultations have been invaluable in helping Council to fine-tune its budget for the coming years and in developing its corporate plan, which provides a vision for our region for the next 5 years with a focus of achieving key outcomes for this community. Your feedback tonight and feedback from online submissions will be incorporated in both of these documents, which will come back for Council consideration in June. Those of you who have attended budget community consultations in previous years will see a slight change in format. This evening we'll be running some workshop style activities at the end of this presentation to gather your perspective on the draft corporate plan 2025 to 2030. To set the scene, here are some facts about the Scenic Rim you may not be aware of. I think they're going up on the screen in a second. Scenic Rim population and growth as of 30th of June 2023 was approximately 45,248. By 2041, it is estimated that there will be approximately 65,000 residents in the Scenic Rim. In 2023, there was approximately 16,500 local jobs, of which 2,177 jobs are in healthcare and social assistance, making it our largest employment sector in the Scenic Rim. The total land size of Scenic Rim is 4,200 kilometres squared. The total region has 9 national parks and conservation parks covering more than 84,400 hectares. For those who operate in acres, this equates to 208,000 acres. Then when you compare Scenic Rim in total land area, Ipswich and Logan together is approximately 2,000 square kilometres. So Scenic Rim is actually a bit more than twice their combined size. There are more than 200 rare and threatened species within the Scenic Rim, We have a lot to get through this evening, so I would like to now introduce our Acting General Manager, Council Sustainability, Deborah Moore, and Acting General Manager, Asset and Environmental Sustainability, Shane Gillett, to provide details and service and infrastructure, including the budget for the incoming year. So welcome the two officers.
Thank you, Councillor Chalk, and welcome everybody. Just to let you know that this presentation is going to be around 15 minutes, and then there's about 5 minutes afterwards for you to ask questions. So if you could please hold your questions to then that would be appreciated. So how did we come up with a draft budget? So what we've done is we've rolled over last year's budget and existing services and adjusted it for some predicted price increases. We've sought feedback from staff on potential new initiatives. We've included capital projects from the 10-year plan that were scheduled for next year. We've factored in any changes we are aware of, such as the changes to the state waste levy. We've allowed for some predicted growth. We've allowed for some modest revenue increase to ensure expenditure can be funded, an appropriate level of cash maintained. And we've applied a rate increase in consultation with the councillors at the moment, which is just an indicative increase, and that may change. Just some other facts around influencing of costs going up and revenue going up is it's about CPI is 1.8% for across Australia, 2.4% for the state, and we've just received in the last 24 hours what they call Queensland's Council Cost Index, and that's around 3.5% predicted for next year, which is slightly lower than last year, which was 3.8%. So some of the influences that will shape the budget as we go along, that will change this baseline, is your feedback and the corporate plan, as well as we're about to go into workshops with the councillors to talk about budgets, and they've got 5 weeks of full days where they will be discussing the budget, looking at all the things that affect it, and the changes will be made as they go, with the budget then to be ready for a meeting, ordinary meeting in about the 25th of June. So that's how we came to that. So just some other facts around that as well is general rates and community infrastructure charge. We've put on there at the moment an average of around 7%. A new environmental levy that we're looking at, which is at $50 per annum to be introduced to fund some key new programs, and what they will be, those programs will be look at biosecurity landholder support programs, some reserve management enhancement, flying fox landholder support programs, and some fire mitigation. So they're shaping what those programs are looking like now, but that's about what they're going to fund for now. So the operating maintenance and capital expenses increases will fund an information systems modernisation project, some additional funding for roads renewal, as well as capital works projects. So they're just some of the major things that are happening that have affected what the budget looks like at the moment. The other thing is the waste charges have increased by about 14.3%, and the reason for that is there's the necessity to evaporate leach out from the landfill site at Beaudesert. There's an increase in the state waste disposal levy from $115 going up to $125, and the state's domestic reimbursement of state waste disposal, that's going to drop from 85% to 70% next year, which means it's going to cost council more to provide those services. Just from the draft budget, how it's looking at the moment. So percentage-wise, some of the key factors is the operating grants, subsidies, contributions and donations, about 8% of the budget. Share of profit from associates is about 2%, other revenue at around 5%. Interest received around 3%, sale of contract and recoverable works is around 5%, fees and charges in 9% of the budget, and net rates and utilities around 68% of the budget income. So operating expenses. So this is how it's divided up at the moment. Depreciation expense is around 20% of the budget, financial costs at 1%, materials and services around 42% of the budget, and employee expenses at around 37% of the budget. And just some figures that we've pulled out on what the dollar in the 100 of what those services might look like. So parks, recreation space and cemeteries is about $4.41 in 100. Sporting infrastructure, $1.32. Disaster management, 55 cents. Planning and development services, 94 cents. And regulatory and environmental services, $4.82, and library services, $2.86. So just a few figures on what that might look like for you. And now I'm going to hand over to Shane. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Shane Gillett, Acting General Manager, Asset and Environmental Sustainability. As most people will be aware, Council manages and operates a very diverse range of assets, ranging from roads and bridges, footpaths, buildings, community facilities, and open space assets. As part of this draft capital budget, we're trying to balance that mix between renewing and maintaining our existing asset base while ensuring upgrades and growth within the network. As can be seen on the screen there, Council has a current asset value on the books of around $1.4 billion worth of assets. So that's the cost of what it would cost Council if we had to replace everything at the present point in time. Breakdown of the different asset classes there, but as you can see, over 74% and $1 billion of assets within our transport network, and heavy focus on that as part of our capital works program. As part of our planning and management of these assets, Council has 4 separate asset management plans, which sets the framework of how these assets are managed. This includes the timing of when assets should be replaced, or what is known as their useful life, and how our depreciation expense is calculated, how often we undertake condition assessments, which forms the basis of our rehabilitation program, and other key strategies and frameworks that set out that when those triggers are in place for our new assets. Council is currently undertaking a review of these plans and part of the incorporation here, but the fundamental principle of optimising asset life and reducing whole of life costings is still the core principle that we apply. Just to put some quantitative figures in relation to what is currently out there that has been discussed previously. So Council currently maintains over 1,750 kilometres of road network between our sealed and unsealed road network, and have a further 520 kilometres of state roads as there. We have over 130 bridges, of which 62 are still timber and 68 concrete, as well as own 4 swimming pools and operate them, and then have another management arrangement over another 2 within the region. As part of our draft capital works program, as part of this budget, we currently have $29.6 million worth of expenditure. The average over the next 10 years is averages at that just over $35 million, which accommodates both that rehabilitation and a little growth within the network. We are heavily relying on grants to assist us in funding that capital works. As part of the base, we have $6.7 million in the budget, of which just under $4 million is for our road networks, $200,000 for our state library grants, as well as $2.5 million in infrastructure charges, which predominantly come from our developer contributions. And as part of this draft budget, over 81% or $24 million is allocated towards the rehabilitation and renewal of our existing asset base. This is just a bit of a slide to demonstrate the mix of our current spend, and as can be seen, the majority within our transport network being the blue mark there. Some of the key highlights as part of the budget, draft budget for the next year is $6.8 million in renewing Council's road network, which includes resealing and rehabilitation, and includes an extra $1 million for our asphalt roads. $2 million project for the Beachmont Road, which is an upgrade and safety improvements to part of that. 1.9 for the first section of Veristale Scrub Road, which is an upgrade and safety improvement. 1.5 million for Coralbin Road, which we've just been successfully in obtaining grant funding from Black Spot program. 1.6 million for Taylor Bridge at Christmas Creek, which once again is a grant-funded submitted project, and 1.2 million for our continual rehabilitation of our timber bridge network throughout the region. Some other capital spends is $300,000 for the upgrade and replacement of the toilet at Fassifern Reserve, $650,000 sport and recreation for key infrastructure and rehabilitation. This funding we try to maximise with additional grant funding that becomes available from the state and federals throughout the course of the year. $100,000 for the skate park upgrade at Moriarty Park, $80,000 for our picnic shelter replacement program, so where our shelters are starting to deteriorate, to replace them, and $250,000 for our library books and resources, which is offset by the $200,000 grant mentioned before. So that's the snapshot of the capital program and the budget, and we're willing to take any questions from the floor.
Shane, what last year when we were talking about the budget, you're looking at your equipment turnover and replacement program. So the question that I raised last year was basically, thank you, what was council doing about looking at other ways of managing the equipment, i.e. looking at leasing arrangements?
Yes, so as part of continual process review, we look at those type of options, and currently still owning and maintaining that is still the best for council at this present point in time. So we've currently reviewed our fleet policy and currently up for review there, where we have our turnover, our white fleet, our vehicles and trucks, which follows the standard type of replacement program, and sale thereof.
So have you actually undertaken the assessment to see lease versus owning outright?
Yeah, we did that just before last budget when we discussed that last year. So it's still relevant. Like each year we touch base, and it's still relevant at this present point in time, particularly how we have it such a diverse area to look after from that point of view.
Is that your assessment? Is that readily available so we can see what the comparison is between the two?
Oh, it's an internal document, yes. That's just part of our business as usual process.
It would be nice to know what the difference is, if it's a substantial saving by going ownership versus lease. That would be really an interesting figure to see the difference between the two. I'm not convinced that actual outright ownership is actually a better way to go. But anyway, it would be handy to see what the difference is between the two.
Deborah and Shane, thanks for your talk. I guess the obvious question is, with our rate increase, I appreciate you giving us like the CPI for council business type of thing, which was about 3.5%. We're going to have a rate increase, I guess, when you add on the $50, that's going to make it about a 10% rate increase, or you can tell me what it will be. But I mean, I guess, yeah, the obvious question is why do we have that magnitude of rate increase? I could just reflect back maybe 10, 15 years ago when we were continually told we needed population increase out here to get our rates down to what I would think is a sustainable level, which is CPI. We've had a big population increase. We're going to keep having population increase, but we had a respite last year from an above CPI rate increase, but that seems to have gone now.
Well, we had to start with a number and to just make sure that we've got a modest surplus at the moment. So that came out at being 7% for now. But as the workshops go on with councillors, and there may be programs, there may be other ways of looking at revenue, looking at the way we do our rates, which might help change that. So those figures may change once we go through the budgets. Also around any feedback that you as a community give us, and that way then we're making more of an informed decision. But at this point in time, just so that we had a little bit of a surplus and to look at our sustainability, that was the figure that was put on there, and that may change over the next few months as we go through the budget and work out things. And there might be things that come out of that which will be cost-saving measures that might reduce that as well.
Yeah, I just don't understand if budget. If I had a budget based on my income at home, I just can't say I want to have a bit more. You know, budget's a budget, and I just don't understand the rationale. I really feel that we're just pushed as far as we can go every time as to what council feels it'll get away with, rather than starting off and saying that's our budget. We can't go past that, and I shouldn't. I'm sure other people have things to say, so I won't say any more. But
No, that's all right.
I do feel we just push to our limits all the time.
Yeah.
I find that really frustrating.
And I understand that. And council get pushed to their limits as well, because if we look at councils in the last 10 years, say, and the responsibilities that are starting to come back to council and programs and expenditure that is and I'll call it creep, in from state government and programs that council have now had to fund and take in under their wing over time, that has also not helped councils, and growth hasn't been where it should have been either. So it's a bit of a catch-22 for us at the moment in that respect. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm not sure if this is really a question or just a comment, but it would be interesting to have a look at the previous budget where you have basically come in under budget.
I'm sorry, I wasn't here last year, so I don't know if it came in under budget or not.
We're looking at efficiency.
Yes.
And the comment from the gentleman over there is clearly if you can't keep within your current budget, there's a problem with efficiency. Now, you can blame everyone else for that, like the state government putting on you this, that and the next thing. But you can also accept some responsibility for becoming more efficient in some areas. So it would be nice next time you do something like this to present some areas where you have been achieving better than expected with your budget.
Yep.
I keep thinking of maybe a department of council efficiency might be something you could look at before you do your next budget, where you can show and demonstrate to us where you're delivering more than you thought you would, rather than we're going to have to ask for more money.
So we will look at efficiencies as we go through the budget and work through the budget with the councillors over the next 5 weeks. And if there is efficiencies to be had, we'll certainly be looking at that as part of that process. Yep.
I was going to say, never been accused of not being loud. So I've a two-part question, if that's okay. We had our land values reviewed and increased, and I understand that's not a council issue, but then to get a proposed 7% rate increase on top of that, do you feel that that might be double dipping? And secondly, if your capital expenditure of $29.6 million for this year, and you're saying it's going to average 35.6 over the next 10, that's $6 million a year. A ratepayer is going to be expected to foot the bill for that.
You want to go first?
Yeah, I can go first. So yes, the land valuations have gone up, but it won't be double dipping, because at the end of the day, what happens is we need to look at the rate and the dollar which is charged for the rates, and we will need to have a good look at that and what that looks like at the moment. So just because the your land valuations for some of you, some went up, I think, around 10%, some went up, I believe, around,
15.72%.
yep, there was others that went up around the 40% as well. So at the end of the day, we're going to have to look at our rates and our rating categories and how we look at that rate in the dollar.
And the second part of the question?
Yep, that'd be me. So in relation to that, a lot of that infrastructure in those middle years are actually for growth type of investment, which will be funded by that developer contribution, that 2.5 million that I said, external funding. So that's there, or a couple other major bridge projects that we're planning for, which hoping to get external funding for grant funding. So a lot of the projects in there are heavily reliant on additional grant money and funded by developer contributions.
There's a fair gap between 2.5 and 6.
Yeah, there's some major infrastructure in those middle parts to accommodate for the growth.
I've got a couple of questions. So 37% of the budget goes to wages in council. Private enterprise says that probably shouldn't be over 30%, but council isn't private. But I'm just wondering, is council actually happy with 37% wages out of your budget? Because if I was running a business, I'd be cringing at that. And are you reviewing that, and can you potentially bring that down? The second part is, if rates are going to increase by 7% and then you've got your $50 environmental levy, what support is the council going to give to residents of the Scenic Rim that their family budgets can't stretch as it is and they're struggling to put food on the table? What is council going to propose to support people with those increases of cost of living for the Scenic Rim?
So in relation to the wages and salaries, at the moment 30%, but we're always looking at our establishment, what staff we've got anyway, so that's something that we do have a look at, and we are always reviewing. So at the moment 37% is the average for us. I don't know what other councils are and what that looks like on their pie graph. I'm not sure what, in relation to cost of living and relief for households, what that might look like. And I dare say when council sit down to review the budget and start working on any changes and that some of those things that you're talking about will be top of mind for them, and that will influence their decisions on how this is going to go as well.
Can I just answer that Jade's
Yes,
question
yep,
there
you
to
may.
a certain extent? And your point's right, and it varies from business to business, of course, Jade, as you know. The biggest figure there, of course, was materials and service, and that includes contractors. And when we try to compare council to council, it gets very difficult. You know, how many wages do you have there compared to other councils? But how many contractors do they employ, and how many? You know, to go through it, you really have to go through line by line what they actually spend in every area. We've got, Shane, you'd know better than I, but we've got a lot more contractors operating now because we're short of staff. Now, we believe it's more efficient to have staff rather than contractors. If I was a contractor, I'd want a profit when I'm doing the work for council, and so they should. Yeah, but it's a fair challenge, and it's often hard to actually compare like with other councils. So, I know the Gold Coast do most of their contracting out for parks and gardens, mowing. Yeah, they have contractors doing that, for instance. Yeah, you can imagine it's a big part of that down there. But and we try to compare like with like, and challenge ourselves whether we're doing the best. The way we do it is that the best way?
Thank you, Councillor.
My question is also concerning staffing. Could it be that the work is being increased to meet the level of staffing, and if the council is sometimes accused of micromanaging items such as applications from businesses, and if that very detailed micromanaging wasn't in place, the staffing could be assigned to different areas.
So when we spoke before about efficiencies and what we could do within council, we're always looking at ways in which we could work smarter and not harder. And the other thing at the moment is I talked about the modernisation project for our upgrades for our computers and our systems. And as we go through that modernisation and upgrade, there is going to be efficiencies within there as we be able to go online more with things that will help with some of that as well. So it's always in progress. We're always looking at it. And as we modernise, it will get better as well in that respect. Yep.
Yeah, g'day. Just want to ask a question about what's going on with this new campground initiative and why all the heavy regulations on small local campgrounds that have been basically doing what they're doing for decades, and then all of a sudden you're putting a stop to it with what appears to be quite onerous expectations from very small businesses. There's a Channel 9 article going around at the moment talking about how one of the campgrounds in the local areas tried to achieve all of their permits, and it's cost them at this point $500,000.
Yes, if you had a look at that Channel 9 one, it's actually not in this area. It was at, for memory, Fraser Coast. So that $500,000, that was there and their processes. And other than that, at this point in time, I can't really comment on it. It's not my area of expertise. In fact, I don't think there's anyone in the room tonight whose area of expertise it is. We don't have any planning staff here. So I'm quite happy to take your question offline and get some answers back to you on that. That's fine.
We have councillors here then?
We have councillors here, and I'm going to say that we probably need the expertise of the staff to answer that in the correct way and make sure that whatever information comes back to you is correct at the moment.
Okay, well, one of the problems with that is that these small campgrounds, we're bringing people out to use the businesses, and we're wondering if you're going to bring a whole bunch of expensive regulations in for us, what are you willing to do to help us with that? What are you willing to do to help us promote the region towards tourism, which is what you say you're doing, but then I understand there's 200 local campgrounds that have been shut down?
And I honestly cannot comment on that, and I do know that there's a small working group that are working on those, and that working group actually involves people within that this affects as well. So,
okay, well,
yeah.
I haven't been informed of that.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And I'm going to have to now pass over to, and if you've got any more questions, I'm quite happy to take them offline, but so that we can keep rolling tonight and get through everything, I'm sorry to say that I'm going to have to hand over to Joe to talk about the corporate plan. Thanks, Joe.
Alrighty, thank you. And just, to reiterate that if anyone has some specific questions or concerns, then we do have staff here who can grab your details, who can get the information together for you, and we can get back to you in the coming days. So a little bit of a shift now to talk about the little bit of a longer term look. So obviously we're working on the budget for next financial year, but at the same time the mayor and councillors have been looking at a little bit of a longer term plan, the 2025-2030 corporate plan. So council actually has a legislative requirement to have a corporate plan. So it's in the Local Government Act, and our current corporate plan expires in 2026. So after the election, the mayor and the councillors were really keen to have a look at that longer term plan and come up with a new plan for the coming 5-year period. So the corporate plan is a really important document. So we are looking longer term, but it informs the budget. It informs the service delivery that we have and the service levels. It also informs other plans and strategies that council has. So it's a really key document, and your feedback will help us to shape that and get it right. So this draft document has been developed with the mayor, the councillors and the executive team, and it's here as a consultation draft, so really open to feedback, and not just tonight, but over the coming weeks, as Councillor Chalk mentioned, we're accepting feedback up until the 12th of May. So there's a few different ways you can obviously provide that feedback. But what I'm going to do tonight is just step through the key elements of that corporate plan. So explain some of the background to where those ideas have come from, and so that when you're having a look at it and you're giving your feedback, then you can have your say on that document and inform how that's going to look like when it's finalised. So the first element of the corporate plan I'm going to just talk about is a vision statement. So the vision statement is really looking to the longer term. It's looking about capturing what's special about Scenic Rim, what we want to be known for now and into the future. And there was a great deal of discussion that led to this particular statement, and you can see it captures a number of different things. So it's talking about the Scenic Rim as a world-renowned region, recognised for its unique natural beauty and heritage, and authentic experiences and welcoming communities. So we're covering off, the natural environment, the scenery, the history and heritage of the region, as well as looking at economic opportunities, visitor opportunities, and really a lot of conversations about the strong community spirit of this region. So in reviewing that vision statement, as you look through the document and give us your feedback, we're really looking to check if that is right. Does that ring true to you? Is that where you want the region to head? Is it what's going to be meaningful for you and the people around you in your community? So that's the 5-year vision. The second element is a mission statement, and looking at this is really looking at setting out council's reason for being, the reason we're here. It really helps all the people that work for council and with council to understand why we're here and what we do. It's really important to the points that were made about efficiency, that we are here for community and we deliver a wide range of different services. So the way that those services are delivered, the standard to which they're delivered, the infrastructure that we're delivering, and how what quality and how frequently we deliver that infrastructure is really all about our core reason for being. So, you would have heard Shane talking about those role we have in managing all the assets. So we have to plan ahead and manage all those renewals and replacements so that the community has the transport infrastructure and the parks, open spaces and community buildings that we need. So, the mission is really two core parts, is about service delivery and around managing that infrastructure. So just talking about the values have been in place for a little while internally, and it's really about capturing the things that are really important to how council works and how we want to work internally and with the community. So the 4 values that spell out SRRC are service, which is really about the fact that we're here delivering services. We're here for the service of the community. We are wanting to be resilient resilient to those changes and challenges that we experience, and really looking to help the community be resilient as well. We really want to operate with respect internally with all the different teams working together, and also with our customers and our residents across the board. So we really want to consistently show that level of commitment to making things better in the region. And these values are really relevant to everybody that works with council. And we really want to include them into the corporate plan to really give them, show our level of commitment to those values. So a lot of the comments that we were hearing around the budget, we're talking about how can council be efficient, how can we make sure that we're using the money that we collect through rates in the best possible way. And as part of the corporate plan, one of the new programs that we're looking at rolling out is a program which looks at all those things that are around how council does business, how we operate, and how we can be as efficient as possible. So there are 5 key areas in this. One of them is financial sustainability. So really looking at how we can plan for that long-term sustainability. We've got a lot of assets on our books, and we've got a lot of services to deliver. We've got a plan for the long term. We've always got to have a longer term view than just the next budget. So that's a really important area where we're going to be doing some detailed work. In terms of operational effectiveness, this is really what a few people were saying around, we do need to be really responsible with the resources that we have and do as much as possible to be efficient and effective. So that's about our technology, our processes, the way our teams work together. And there are a number of programs looking at that internally, but this is a really key area of focus for council. Customer experience, obviously we deliver a vast range of services, and we have contact with our customers in person, online, through the phone and through online services. So we're really looking at how we can make those processes as easy as possible, get the information to people that they need, really just provide that support and information as well as we possibly can. And it's a lot about communication, around engaging with people, and also making those processes clear, simple, and as easy as possible. United Team really talks to the fact that we want our team culture, all the people that work for council as a fairly big employer in the region, to have to work together as one united team, to be safe, and to really have a strong, effort in working together and have a good culture. So we want, we want to attract good employees. We want our employees to have a good experience and really work together for the benefit of everybody in the community. And as Shane mentioned, in terms of strategic partnerships, we do rely an awful lot on getting money into the region. So a lot of our bigger projects, our bigger capital projects, we do need to attract external funding from lots of different sources, often state or federal grant funding. But there are sometimes other parties that can help us to do some of those projects and the really big, challenging, expensive pieces of work. So we really want to focus on how we are making a really good case for that funding, and we are working in partnership with key people, key organisations to really get some of those projects off the ground. So that's a sort of program of work which looks at the way council works, trying to make us as efficient and effective as we possibly can. And that really looks at some of those internal processes as well, our IT systems, our HR systems, and making those things work as well as possible. In terms of community priorities, where are we going? Thank you. In terms of the community priorities, we've developed 6 strategic goals. So we have looked at the existing corporate plan, taken on board all of those things that we captured there, and developed 6 new strategic goals, which are looking at the 6 areas of focus for the next 5 years for council. So the first one is really about planning and placemaking. So what we mean by that is things like the planning scheme and how that works, and localised plans for smaller towns and villages across the region, that neighbourhood planning that really enhances the community and meets their needs. The second one is around integrated transport. So we're looking not just at roads, but around footpaths and cycleways, and looking at how to really support the active transport and the roads and bridges to make sure that we can meet the needs of that growing population. The economic development strategic goal looks at supporting business and looking at large and small businesses, as well as tourism, regional events and so on. So we're looking still to maintain that as an area of priority. In terms of connected communities, we're looking at capturing the work here around libraries, culture, arts, disaster management, and capturing those really important things that help to build that community spirit. Environment and waste, we've mentioned how important the region's environment is and the scenery and so on. And council is a landowner, but council also has a role in supporting other landowners to protect the environment. So this looks at issues such as weeds and biodiversity, as well as waste management. So all local governments are managing waste from the population. So we're looking at landfill, how we can increase recycling, reuse, that kind of thing. And finally, around sport and recreation. So the work that council does in that space is around looking after facilities and playing fields and so on. But we also acknowledge that most of the activities for sport and recreation are really driven by volunteers across the board. So, my own children play sport, and those are entirely run by volunteers. So council wants to look at how it can support those volunteers and committees through training or through sport, through training and grants to really ensure that people have those opportunities to participate in a whole wide range of different sport and recreation activities. So that's a very quick run through of what the core of the documents is made up of. I'm happy to take a couple of questions now, and then we might move into a couple of activities. But really what we're looking at doing is giving you that overview of the plan, so that when you're giving that feedback, you've got a good understanding of what those different elements are, where they've come from, and what they're all about. So does anybody have any questions initially? Thank you. We just grab a mic.
Thank you. I noticed you mentioned strategic partnerships, and it's come to my attention that there is a thing called ICLEI, International Council for Local Environmental Issues.
Right.
So from my perspective, you've got a lot of local experience here. You've got a lot of wildlife groups. You've got sustainability groups. Why are we talking on an international level when we could involve collaborative, local experience?
I would say absolutely we want to work with local groups and local organisations, and across all those different areas. We work with community groups and bush care groups and so on. So absolutely, yes, it is local level work as well as state
as far as
and
I can see, the strategic alliance you need is with your local community, not some spurious international organisation that really hasn't got a clue about the communities here in the Scenic Rim.
Okay,
so there are things like this that they look ridiculous to me. And I don't know that you would get great benefit from any international council organisation. You'd get an awful lot from working with your own communities and listening to them.
Thank you so much for that comment. Thank you.
Cheers. Spent my working life in large corporates and seen more mission, vision and value statements, mind maps and lovely corporate plans than I'd like to remember. Clearly you have a department for acronyms because we seem to thrive on acronyms, and it's noted. What it really comes down to is the experience on the ground, not all the grand statements and impressive plans. I notice in your focus acronym that the C stands for customers. It would be nice if council thought of us as ratepayers or employers rather than customers who come with some discretionary capability, whether we participate and buy something from you or not. That's not the way it is. We're actually ratepayers who give you the funds to do what you need to do. And as I say, it really comes down to our lived experiences in interacting with the council. And in many cases, that's not as productive or open as it should be, and sometimes very inefficient. So just a few thoughts from my experience.
Thank you for those comments. I agree that the plan needs to be fully implemented, and the reality of individual experiences is what they'll take away from their view of council. I understand that completely. In terms of the comment about customer, I understand exactly where you're coming from. We use that terminology broadly to look at all the people we're interacting with, but I do take your point that there are some things where you can't stop and choose another option. There are some things that you can. So, I mean, it's a range of different services depending on which one you're accessing, but I definitely take your point. And, definitely we do respect that in some cases we can't, the customer doesn't have the option to go shop elsewhere. I take your point entirely. Thank you. Alrighty, maybe
I
two
agree
more.
with the...
Yeah.
I agree with the gentleman over there. It's all well and good to have a lovely document. And look, overall, I think it's quite a good document. But what this document screams to me is that there's a culture problem in the Scenic Rim Council. Everything I hear is that probably 95% of the people I talk to are really unhappy with the interactions that they have with council. The interactions I've had personally with council, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being shocking, I'd put it at 9.2. So does the council suggest that there's a culture problem? And if there is, how is the council, in this plan, corporate plan, how is that culture going to be improved?
Firstly, I'll say I'm sorry that your experiences haven't been what you would like them to be. Personally, I know that, the people that I work with every day are all there for the right reasons and do work incredibly hard to get the experience right for our community and our residents. So, look, I do think there's always room for improvement. There's always things we can do better. If you I think to say a blanket statement around the whole culture all the time is really difficult, because there's always going to be challenges for an organisation. We're always open to that feedback and want to improve. So I don't believe there's a whole broad brush, terrible culture, but we are aware, we do want to improve. We do want to look at those specific issues and try and make them better. Absolutely.
And also, sorry, just one more thing. In your economic development, you talk about working with businesses. Most other sections have other sub-documents that you can go into and look at things. Is the council actually going to put together a decent document that actually says how they will support business in the region? Because it is, I find it difficult as a business owner to find information on how Scenic Rim Council can support you. I can find everything on if we do something wrong, what you're going to do, but the actual, this is what we can do to support you guys.
Okay. Look, economic development is not my area, but what I do know is that our economic development team are working on some planning and strategy documents around a future plan for that economic development. So we can certainly provide that feedback back to that team as they're working through that strategy document. And I think making it, packaging up information, making it as easy as possible for business owners is a really good point, and happy to take that on board, not just for the corporate plan, but also pass that feedback back to those people that are putting together the more detailed, like you said, the supporting documentation for those business owners. And that's great feedback. Thank you so much. Maybe the last question.
Yeah,
Thank you.
just another little on the ground example, I suppose. Of, and my experiences with council have been mixed, and there's lots of good things about council, and particularly parks and gardens. I think you do a terrific work there. But just on the customer experience, on the online where you can type in a concern or an issue, feedback to council. Just both my wife and myself. I sent one about 8 months ago, just asking about speed limits in town here, where I would argue we're far from best practice. We've still got 60-kilometre signs right in the middle of town, and I just got no response. And I just sent off my third, inquiry the other night, just saying I've heard nothing. And even if people want to say, look, Mr. Chataway, we don't deal with people like you, or go through your counsellor, or just tell me something, or we're very busy, we'll get back to you in 6 months' time. Just nothing. I've just had zero. And my wife also, we've got a big kangaroo population on Mount French Road on the other side of the road, and she thought, it'd be good to have one of those signs, about watch out for the... And 6 months ago, she wrote on the same, inquiry line, and just nothing. And that's just really, I find that really disappointing, that someone doesn't say, hey, we're really busy with the floods or something, we'll get back to you.
Look, I'll thank you for the comment, and I would agree that's not okay. You should get a response, and happy to follow that. Any specific queries anyone's waiting on, we can certainly take that on board and get that response back to you. I know we are looking at different ways of tracking those customer inquiries and requests. Part of the IT strategy would be to help us to keep track of everything. I can't excuse the fact that you didn't get a response. That's not what it should be. But we do need to look at how we're keeping track of all those multiple inquiries coming in, and making sure that as we're working through a process, like you say, we might not be able to give you an answer straight away, but we should be coming back to you within a time frame to say, this is where we're up to, or this is what you need to do next, or this is what we're going to do next. So I think it's really really valid feedback, and something we can certainly follow up any specific inquiries. But as a general inquiry, I think we do need better processes in place to keep track of and make sure that every inquiry gets a response. Every inquiry gets an interim response if we can't do it within a reasonable time frame. So thank you for that feedback, and we will take that on board. Just
good evening, everyone. While it's a well-acknowledged problem and a frustration of mine. While we fix that problem, please call your counsellor, and if they don't respond, please call me.
Thanks very much. Yeah, it's admirable, certainly when we see that recreation in particular, given the whole of Scenic Rim is growing in most of the areas, and in particular with regards to recreation facilities. I know back in the budget for this current budget has a number of facilities where there's upgrades being conducted. And my question is, how come we're looking at 10 years why is an upgrade more necessary than some areas that don't have any amenities at all? For example, Roadvale.
I might just ask Shane to respond on that, because it's really about how we manage that renewal of our assets and maintenance of our assets.
And prioritise accordingly. So you're talking sport and rec facilities?
So so you've got amenities here for under the upgrades for public amenities.
Yes.
Yeah. So the question was, we're growing in areas, yet we're doing upgrades to some, but at the expense of others which don't have anything.
Correct. So there is a public strategy on public amenities, and lists the priorities of those within there. So our capital works reflect that to accommodate their growth. Once again, we've only got a limited amount of budget, and that budget is allocated based on those priorities. One, to accommodate that growth and appreciate that some areas don't have it. And if there is changes in that growth or that growth area, then we'll adjust that accordingly as part of that strategy and delivery of those capital works programs.
The point is, you're doing upgrades to existing facilities. Why would you not be focusing on those that don't have any amenities over that 10-year rolling plan? $395,000 or $300,000 could go a long way in giving amenities in places that don't have anything at all. And, having a facility is better than nothing at all. Why throw money at doing an upgrade?
I appreciate that and understand that, but in some of these areas where those upgrades are needed, they're at capacity now. So from a tourist point of view, and there, particularly over the Easter long weekend, on different tourist destinations like Tambourine Mountain, that those facilities were not coping and are not coping on a weekly basis. So from a priority point of view, and from a limited funds point of view, those upgrades are needed more in some cases where there is none, because that growth or that usage would be far better spent in those growth areas at this present point in time. If we had more money within that area of budget, yes, 100% that we'd be able to deliver that program, that strategy in a more quicker time. And those areas where are past those 10 years would get public conveniences. But at the moment, that's our methodology to try to accommodate that spend.
Right, we might make this the last one so we can get into our workshop activities. Thank you for all the questions, and just one more.
I never realised that you had an integrated transport program or goal, whatever it is. I have no idea what is involved there. Can I just point out that currently there are dire problems with local school buses, and the areas of Tyrone, for example, now no longer have a school bus, and the Arratula to Boonah bus is currently this week not operating, so Arratula people have to drive their children to Boonah High School and pick them up daily. Is there anything that the council can do to improve transport when it's actually needed, rather than having a grand plan that actually doesn't do anything?
Yes, I can answer that. So mid last year, we've started the project of the Integrated Transport Plan, and community consultation was held around June, July. The draft plan is being presented to council next week, and then we'll come back out for final consultation around July. We just have to liaise with Main Roads before we can release any future draft from there. So that is looking at a holistic approach of the integrated transport within the region, particularly around some of those growth areas and those major upgrades that may be required to accommodate the growth. In relation to the bus service itself, unfortunately, that is by the state, from an education point of view. If they're closing those routes, we can continually advocate for that 100%, but for those services, why they're being cut or not being undertaken anymore, I can't go on that from there.
Can I just make a suggestion in that space to contact a state member, John Krause, with that concern? He would be the correct person to help you with that concern.
Alrighty, thank you for all the comments and questions. We will capture all those, and they will inform us as we go through that process for finalising the document, and obviously also the detail that sits underneath that corporate plan. Absolutely.